They mocked her like she was nothing, but by the end of the will reading, she owned everything they ever wanted. The rain hit the sidewalks of Savannah, Georgia like it had a personal grudge. Thick drops pelted the ground, bouncing off the slick blacktop and gathering in little rivers along the cracked curbs. Monica Ellington tightened her grip on her purse and stepped carefully out of the cab, her simple navy dress clinging to her legs in the heavy, wet air. In front of her stood the Whitmore estate, a sprawling brick giant of a house that looked like it belonged in a history textbook. Stone lions guarded the stairway, their faces forever frozen in a snarl that didn't exactly scream, "Welcome." She adjusted her low heels and started up the steps, heart pounding harder with every click against the old stone. It wasn't fear. Not really. It was the feeling you get when you know you're walking into a room full of people who think they already know everything about you. Through the wide double doors, the inside smelled like lemon polish and old money. Every surface gleamed, from the checkered marble floor to the gold-framed paintings that stared back at her with cold eyes. A dozen or so people already milled around the foyer, cousins, nieces, nephews, people Monica had only heard Harold Whitmore complain about. The moment she stepped in, conversation dipped. Heads turned, stares hit her like slaps to the face. Whispers floated under the tall ceiling. What's she doing here? She worked for him, didn't she? The assistant or whatever? He always had a soft spot for charity cases. Monica inhaled slowly, letting their words pass through her like smoke. She smoothed her damp dress and walked across the foyer, heels muffled by the thick Persian rug. No one made room for her, not that she expected them to. She found a chair along the wall by a dusty grandfather clock that ticked louder than anyone was speaking. Sitting there, Monica folded her hands in her lap and kept her eyes on the floor, feeling the judgment settle over her like a second skin. She had worked for Harold Whitmore for 12 long years, managed his schedules, handled his medications, even sat with him when his own family couldn't be bothered. They had shared birthdays, holidays, long evenings with Harold talking about his regrets and the life he wished he had lived. But none of these people cared about that. To them, she was the help, an outsider who didn't belong. A pair of pointed shoes stopped in front of her. Monica looked up to see a woman in a sharp gray suit, a diamond tennis bracelet flashing as she tucked a sleek strand of hair behind her ear. "You might be more comfortable in the kitchen," the woman said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. A few snickers rippled around the room. Monica smiled politely, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. "I'm fine right here, thanks." The woman's mouth twisted in a tight little smirk before she turned away, her heels snapping against the marble like gunshots. The old grandfather clock ticked on, each swing of the pendulum heavier than the last. Finally, a door creaked open at the end of the hallway, and a short, balding man in a rumpled suit appeared. Mr. Danvers, Harold's longtime attorney. He shuffled forward, a thick envelope clutched tightly in one hand. "Everyone please into the study," he called, voice cracking with age. "We'll begin shortly." Chairs scraped, people muttered. Monica rose carefully, following the crowd into a wood-paneled room lined with sagging bookshelves and oil portraits of dead Whitmores glaring down from above. She found another seat at the very back, near the dusty window where the storm outside rattled against the glass. Danvers cleared his throat and placed the envelope on the massive oak desk. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, pulling out a sheaf of papers thick enough to choke on. "I want to thank you all for being here today," he began. "As you know, Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions regarding the distribution of his estate." The air grew tight, as if everyone had sucked in a breath and forgotten to let it go. Danvers flipped to the first page, clearing his throat again, and just like that, the real show was about to start. But the moment Danvers started reading, it was clear this wasn't going to go the way anyone thought. Danvers's voice crackled as he read the formal greetings from Harold's will. It was the usual legal stuff, thanking everyone for coming, acknowledging their connection to him. But Monica noticed something. Harold didn't call them family. He called them associates and relatives by blood. It wasn't warm. It wasn't loving. It was cold and precise, the way a businessman writes off a bad investment. The snickering had died down, replaced by a thick, uncomfortable quiet. Monica sat motionless, hands still clasped, eyes straight ahead. She could feel the stares, though, heavy, hot, searching for some sign of weakness. Across the room, a man she recognized, Trevor Langston, one of Harold's nephews, leaned toward the woman in the sharp gray suit who had insulted Monica earlier. "I mean, come on," he muttered loudly enough for Monica to hear. She probably thought she was getting a bonus or something. Look at her sitting back there like a stray dog. The woman snorted, covering her mouth daintily like she was trying to hide a laugh. A few others chuckled too, their shoulders shaking. Danvers looked up sharply over his glasses but said nothing. This wasn't his fight. Monica's cheeks burned, but she didn't move. She thought of Harold sitting in his wheelchair in the sunroom telling her, "When people show you who they are, don't try to paint them different. Believe them the first time." So she believed them. Trevor wasn't done. He turned toward Monica fully now, resting one arm along the back of his chair like he was settling in for a show. "You know he only kept you around because he pitied you, right?" Trevor said, voice dripping with mock kindness. "Old men get sentimental when they're dying. It's nothing personal." Monica tilted her head slightly, fixing him with a look so blank and calm it made him falter for half a second. She didn't say a word. The woman in the gray suit, her name was Clarissa Vaughn, Harold's great-niece, leaned forward, fake sweet smile plastered across her face. "Monica, was it?" she cooed. "It's so good you're here. After all, someone will need to polish the silver after the real business is done." The room chuckled again, louder this time. "Open now. Ugly." Monica could feel her chest tightening, but she kept her breathing steady. These people, with their designer suits and private school accents, thought the world owed them something just for existing. They didn't even know Harold anymore, not really. He had told her so himself. Danvers cleared his throat again, this time with more force, trying to pull the room back to order. "If we could continue," he said, giving Clarissa and Trevor a pointed look. They didn't apologize. They didn't even pretend to. Monica thought about leaving. She could stand up right now, walk out into the rain, call another cab, and let them have whatever crumbs they thought they deserved. But then she remembered something else Harold had once said. "Stay to the end, Monica. You deserve to see how it all turns out." So she stayed. Danvers turned back to the will, adjusting his glasses. "Now, regarding the division of Mr. Whitmore's assets." Everyone leaned in. Monica stayed perfectly still. But the next few words out of Danvers's mouth shattered the whole room like a hammer to glass. Danvers steadied the paper in his shaking hands and spoke clearly, his voice slicing through the thick, sour air of the study. "I, Harold Benjamin Whitmore, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate." Murmurs bubbled. People shifted in their seats, eager, greedy. "To Monica Ellington, my devoted friend, confidant, and sole beneficiary." For a heartbeat, the room was silent, dead silent, as if the walls themselves sucked in the noise, stunned. Then it erupted. "What?" Trevor barked, half rising from his chair. "You're joking!" Clarissa shouted, clutching her pearls like a bad actress in a soap opera. Chairs screeched backward, voices rose all at once, confused, furious, desperate. Danvers raised a hand for calm, but it was useless. The storm had broken. Monica sat frozen, her mind struggling to catch up with her ears. She blinked slowly, as if that would somehow reset the room, fix whatever strange, sideways world she had just fallen into. Harold? Left it all to her? Across the room, a heavy-set man with a ruddy face, Gerald Vaughn, Clarissa's father, shoved his chair backward with a grunt and pointed a thick finger at Danvers. "This is fraud. There's no way my uncle would leave everything to his assistant." Danvers remained calm, reaching into his folder and pulling out a series of documents. "All paperwork is in order. Mr. Whitmore updated his will 6 months prior to his passing. It was witnessed by 3 independent parties and notarized according to Georgia state law." "But he was sick," Clarissa shrieked. "He wasn't thinking straight. She probably manipulated him." Monica flinched at the word. Manipulated. Like it was a curse hurled at her. Her mouth opened, then shut. What could she even say? That Harold had more clarity in his final months than he ever had? That he had laughed with her, planned with her, trusted her? The accusations kept coming. "You preyed on him. You took advantage of a dying man. She's a gold digger, that's all she ever was." Danvers pounded his fist on the table so hard the stack of papers jumped. "Enough. Mr. Whitmore made his wishes perfectly clear. If anyone chooses to contest the will, you are free to pursue legal action. But I assure you, It will be a losing battle. Monica looked down at her lap, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out everything else. She hadn't asked for this. She had come to say goodbye. Maybe hear a kind word in Harold's last testament. She never even imagined. Clarissa wasn't finished. She stormed across the room, heels stabbing into the rug, and stood directly over Monica. "You think you're better than us now, don't you?" she hissed. "You think sitting in a dead man's house makes you somebody?" Monica met her eyes, steady, unflinching. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't stand. She just answered quietly, so only Clarissa could hear. "I never thought I was better. You did." Clarissa's mouth opened like she wanted to say something clever, but nothing came out. Her face flushed red, and she turned on her heel, storming back to her chair. Around Monica, the relatives buzzed with anger, disbelief, panic. They threw wild accusations, made frantic plans. A few even whispered to each other about getting lawyers first thing in the morning. But none of them noticed Monica sitting there, 1,000 memories pouring through her mind. Christmases spent in Harold's kitchen, the long afternoons reading to him by the fire, the quiet understanding that had grown between them when no one else had cared to see the man behind the fortune. She hadn't won anything today. She hadn't taken anything. Harold had given her a final gift, the truth about who had truly cared for him and who had only loved his money. But there were still things about Harold's decision that even Monica didn't know. Things that would soon change everything even more. The rain outside had slowed to a soft, steady patter against the windows. Inside, the Whitmore relatives argued among themselves, throwing around blame like confetti at a bad parade. Monica sat perfectly still, barely blinking, as Mr. Danvers quietly shuffled closer to her seat. "Ms. Ellington," he said under his breath, offering her a slim leather binder. "Harold left this for you, personal letter inside." Monica stared at it for a second, unsure if her hands would even work properly. She took it carefully, her fingertips brushing the worn leather. "Thank you," she whispered. She clutched the binder to her chest like a lifeline, barely noticing as the room around her continued to crack under the pressure. But the moment she opened it, she was somewhere else entirely. The memory hit so hard and fast, it almost made her sway. 2 years ago, early spring, Harold's favorite room, the old sunroom on the east side of the house. A wall of windows, sunlight pouring in over the cracked tile floor, the heavy scent of honeysuckle from the garden outside. Harold had been in his recliner, wrapped in one of those thick, cable-knit blankets Monica had ordered for him when his hands started to ache. He'd looked at her over the rim of his glasses, face lined but alert. "Monica," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." She remembered setting down the tray of tea, pulling up a chair, heart pounding. "Anything, Mr. Whitmore. If I left it all to you, this house, the money, the company shares, what would you do with it?" The question stunned her so badly she'd laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but Harold didn't laugh. He just waited, patient as ever. I don't know," she said honestly. "I'd probably make sure no one ever treated anyone else the way I was treated growing up." Harold had smiled then. Not a polite smile, but one that crinkled the corners of his tired eyes. "That's the right answer," he said. "That's the only answer that matters." Back in the present, Monica blinked the memory away, her fingers trembling as she opened the binder. Inside was a simple, handwritten letter. "Monica, you were the only one who stayed when the world stopped pretending to care. You showed up when I was at my worst. You listened when no one else bothered. You didn't love my money. You loved my broken old soul. So everything I have, I leave to you. Not because you asked for it, not because you needed it, but because you deserved it more than anyone else in my life. Take it. Build something better with it. And don't you dare feel guilty for a second. With all my gratitude, Harold." Monica closed her eyes, pressing the letter to her chest. The noise in the room around her faded into a distant hum. None of them, not Trevor, not Clarissa, not any of the angry faces shouting threats of lawsuits, none of them could touch the truth now. Harold had made his choice with a clear mind and a full heart, and for the first time since she walked through that heavy front door, Monica felt her breathing slow, her shoulders drop. She wasn't here to fight them. She was here to honor him. But the Whitmore family wasn't going to let her go that easily, and the next move they made would push Monica even further. The letter still warm in her hands, Monica looked up, just in time to catch Trevor storming toward her, face twisted into something almost unrecognizable. "You think this is over?" he spat, jabbing a finger toward her chest. "You think a piece of paper makes you one of us?" Clarissa was right behind him, heels clacking furiously against the hardwood, her voice a sharp hiss. "We're not letting you steal what's ours. We'll tie you up in court for years if we have to." A few others chimed in, louder now, emboldened by each other's anger. "Fraud! Manipulation!" She must have forged something. Danvers tried to step in again, voice raised, but no one was listening anymore. The storm had officially blown out of his control. Monica stood up slowly, folding the letter and slipping it back into the binder. She set it carefully in her purse like it was made of glass. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch when Trevor's hand jerked forward in frustration, though he stopped himself just short of grabbing her arm. Some line he wasn't willing to cross. Not yet. Instead, Monica spoke in a voice low and even, the kind you use when you've been fighting invisible battles your whole life and winning quietly. "I didn't take anything from you," she said, locking eyes with Trevor. "You gave it away long before I showed up." The words landed like a slap. Trevor stumbled back as if Monica had physically pushed him. "You're nothing," Clarissa hissed, face blotchy with rage. "You'll always be nothing." Monica smiled faintly, almost kindly. "I heard that all my life," she said. "Funny thing, though, doesn't seem to be true anymore." Clarissa made a sound, part scream, part sob, and stormed from the room, her designer bag swinging wildly from her shoulder. A few others followed, their angry heels and harsh curses echoing off the old walls. One by one, they peeled away, some still shouting threats of lawsuits, others just muttering bitterly under their breath. Trevor stayed the longest, glaring, breathing hard, but eventually even he gave up, shoving the heavy oak door open so hard it bounced against the frame. And then Monica was alone, except for Danvers, who stood silently by the fireplace, watching her with something close to respect. "You handled that better than most would have," he said quietly. Monica gave a small shrug, the weight of the past hour settling over her shoulders. "They were never fighting for him," she said. "Only for what he could give them." Danvers nodded. "He knew that too. That's why he chose you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain had finally stopped outside, leaving the world fresh and washed clean. Monica walked slowly to the window, resting a hand against the cool glass. The estate stretched out before her. The gardens she had helped Harold walk through, the old trees they had watched lose their leaves every fall, the small greenhouse she had helped rebuild when Harold wanted to grow tomatoes again, just because he could. It wasn't just money. It was memories. It was a life. It was trust. She didn't know exactly what she would do with it all yet, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to waste it trying to impress people who had already proven they couldn't see her. She would honor Harold. She would build something better, something lasting. But before she could truly move forward, Monica had one more thing she needed to say. Not to the Whitmores, but to herself. The house was almost silent now, save for the old grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Stubborn, steady, just like Harold had been. Monica took a deep breath and turned away from the window. She gathered her things with slow, deliberate movements, each one anchoring her back into herself. She walked back into the main foyer where the portraits of grim-faced ancestors lined the walls, their judging eyes boring down at her. For the first time since she walked through those front doors, Monica didn't feel small under their gaze. She felt seen. At the threshold, she paused. Behind her, the estate loomed, a monument to generations of power and pride. Ahead of her, the world waited, wet and glistening under the after-rain light. She thought about the voices that had tried to shame her, the hands that had pushed her aside, the years she had been told, without words or even with them, that her place was somewhere lower, somewhere lesser. And she thought about Harold, about the late afternoons when he would talk about regrets he never fixed, the friendships he had let die, the love he never fought for. "Don't waste your time trying to be accepted by people who can't see your worth," he had said once, voice low and rough. "Make something better. Be better." Monica stepped out into the humid savanna air, the binder tucked tightly against her chest. She didn't know exactly what the future would look like, but she knew it would be hers, built with the steady hands of someone who knew what it felt like to be counted out. and had learned, finally, that the only validation that mattered was the one she gave herself. Because sometimes, life doesn't hand you power. It hands you a choice. You can stay small, or you can step fully into who you were meant to be. And Monica Ellington, she was done sitting in the back of the room. She had inherited more than money that day. She had inherited freedom. No matter how many times you're overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, your value isn't up for debate. It's not decided by applause, titles, or anyone's permission. It's decided by how you carry yourself when no one's watching. And when the time comes, carry yourself like you belong. Because you do. If this story made you feel something, share it with someone who needs the reminder that their worth isn't determined by anyone else. And if you've ever doubted yourself, today's the day you stop. Your story isn't over. It's just getting started.